Hello, my name is Chelsea, and I'm doing this presentation as a part of the Educational Administration 6385 class called Culturally Proficient School Leadership. And my partner on this project was Jason. I'm doing this presentation today to inform and educate people about LGBT issues, specifically in schools. One of the reasons why I chose this is because it seems like we, as educators, know a lot about ESL, ELL, bilingual, SPED, a bunch of different things, low income, Title I. We know a lot about a lot of different groups of people, and yet we kind of forget about or just are maybe uncomfortable with LGBT issues. However, LGBT issues are a thread throughout all those different subgroups of people. Within all of those different groups of people, we have LGBT kids in them as well. So I think it's very important that we discuss this. Now, like I just mentioned, I think that this makes people uncomfortable, and I think people are uncomfortable because they don't know about it. But the thing is, I would bet that, and I'm not a betting person, but I would bet that most people have a person who would identify as LGBT in their life, but they don't necessarily know that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I can guarantee you that you know someone who is in the LGBT community, and that's in your personal life. So imagine when we're talking about a classroom of children, you have LGBT students every year. You just may or may not know it. So I feel like that's very important. Now, again, it makes people uncomfortable, and that's because that uncomfortableness comes from not knowing things. If you're not exposed to this information, if you're not exposed to people who are out and who teach you stuff, then you may not know this. So I think it's important to just go over the basics first. Now, we're going to start off with the terminology. Now, I'm going to give you some labels, and these labels are the common terms that people use. Now, the reason why I'm teaching you these terms is because these are terms that people use to describe themselves. And sometimes they can be kind of complicated, and some people say that they're straight up way too complicated. Now, whether that's true or not, you still need to understand that these are labels that people use to learn about themselves and to help people understand them. So it's important to not prescribe these labels to other people. Do not assume anything about anyone, and just understand that, if someone labels themselves like this or they describe themselves as this, then respect that. All right. So let's start off with the what I like to call the alphabet soup. A lot of people use that term. And the reason why I'm starting off with this is because while it may be boring for some people because they already know this stuff, some people honestly really don't know. And so it's important to start off with this education part and learning ourselves as people, and then we can go into the educational issues of this group of people. So let's start off with this. Now, LGBT is the most common way of referring to the quote unquote community. But that's not the only way. Sometimes you see GLBT, sometimes you see LGBTQAI, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but it's talking about the same thing. So it doesn't matter if you put L before G or G before L, it doesn't matter. We're talking about the same thing. But let's talk about what those words mean, or those letters. So L is a lesbian, and I put a person who identifies as male and is attracted to other females. For gay, G, a person who identifies as male and is attracted to other males. However, whereas a lesbian can only refer to a female, gay can also refer to a female or a male, and so it can be described as people who are just homosexuals in general. It could be male or female. For bisexual, is a person who is attracted to both male and females. They may have a preference of one over the other, but it's just a person who's attracted to both genders. Transgender is a person who identifies as a gender different from the one they were born with. Now, in a slide or two, we're going to talk about gender and how it's different from sexual orientation. So I'll get to that in a second. Q is kind of an umbrella term, and it's becoming more popular. I think, and like in my opinion, it's becoming more popular to use this term. Some people use it as a bad word, but a lot of people have used it as a good thing, and just kind of a catch-all term to describe the community or describe themselves. And then A is asexual. This confuses a lot of people. Don't get it confused. It's not that complicated. So the reason why there's like two reasons why people are confused about this. One is because when we learn about asexuality in biology class, what it means is like a worm doesn't have to have sex with another worm in order to make a baby worm. But when we're talking about human beings, A is talking about the prefix A means lacking or without. So this is a person who does not necessarily experience sexual attraction, or if they do, it's very rare. And so people have a hard time understanding that as well, because they're like, if this was like a straight person, they would be like, well, I mean, like I can understand them having sex with like the same gender, but I can't understand a person not having sex at all. That's crazy. It's actually not that crazy, but it's a hard concept for people even within the community to understand. So I just wanted to include that in there as well. So then at the bottom, we also have MTF and FTM. These are ways of describing transitions. So if you are born with biological parts, but you are transitioning to female, well, then that would be the term for you, or the other way around. So here's some more terms. Pansexual. This one is confusing to a lot of people because it sounds very much like bisexual, but bi means two. So bisexual is attracted to men or women or both. Well, both. Okay, but pansexual is not caring about biology or gender or things like that. So what I mean, we're talking about human beings, like a human attracted to a human, don't get me wrong, but we could be talking about more than just male or female. We could be talking about, for instance, that second bullet, a genderqueer person who doesn't identify with what society feels as a male or a female. We're just talking about a person. So a pansexual a lot of times describes themselves as being attracted to a person as opposed to like a body part. Ally, most people know this term, I think. A person who doesn't necessarily fit in with it. I mean, it doesn't like identify as LGBT, or it does not like fit in that, but they support it. They support people who do. Androgyny, or being androgynous, is a person who presents themselves as neither really male or female, but kind of in the middle. Sometimes it can be hard to tell whether this person is male or female, and that's kind of intentional. And to think about who this would be in popular culture, that could be like David Bowie sometimes, or Ruby Rose from Orange is the New Black. A lot of people know her. So she's, androgynous. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender a person is. It's kind of irrelevant. Now, as for the last bullet, I put these words in here because people use them a fair amount, and a lot of people don't know what it means. So these two words, butch and dyke, could mean a bad thing, but a lot of people are using it to describe themselves. So then it's not a bad thing, obviously. So to really explain this, a butch person presents herself with masculinity as opposed to femininity. So she may dress in boys' clothes or men's clothes, but she does not identify as a man. She's still a lady, but she presents herself as more of a masculine person. And a dyke can sometimes be used interchangeably with butch, but it's sometimes just used as like to mean lesbians in general. Okay, so then when you talk about sex and gender, because these are two different things, and sexual orientation is a different thing. So biological sex. This question is, what parts were you born with? Were you born with male parts, female parts, or intersex parts? Now, what is intersex? Intersex, generally speaking, if we're talking about colloquial terms that people are used to, more like a hermaphrodite. So we're talking about chromosomes here and what you're physically born with, genetically born with. Now, gender identity is different than biological sex, because gender identity is asking the question, do you feel you are a man, a woman, or a mix, or neither? Because for a lot of people, biological sex and gender identity do match up. For instance, if a person was born with female parts and they identify as like they feel like a woman, then they would, that matches up, right? That's the majority of people. But then sometimes they don't match up. Now, gender expression is something totally different. Gender expression is how you present yourself. How do you dress or act or behave? And how do you want people to view you? Do you want people to view you as a man, or do you want people to view you as a woman, or do you have a preference? Do you care? That's more like gender expression. Now, cisgender is something that you typically only hear, in my experience, that I've seen in the LGBT community. And this is talking about, if you say that you are cisgendered, that means that you identify with the parts that you were born with. So if you were, again, okay, so for the example, a person born with female body parts and identifies as a woman is cisgendered, or cis for short. But a person born with male body parts and identifies as a woman is transgender, or trans for short. A person was born with female parts, feels like a woman, but expresses herself androgynously, wearing male clothing and a male haircut. She's still a woman because she feels like a woman. Okay, so I've had conversations with people about this because this is confusing for some people. So, what is the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation? Well, most people in the LGBT community go with the gender identity of the person because they're typically more, I'm not going to say more respectful of this issue, but I think they're more aware of this issue. So if a person, um, identifies as a woman, then they will use she and her, and the pronouns of a woman. So that's more of a thing that you like identify with, and the gender of a person has no relation with a person's sexual orientation. Like they're two different things. A person's gender is essentially whether they feel they are a male, female, or genderqueer. That's just a term, but they could use different words. A person's sexual orientation is who they are attracted to. So two different things. For example, because this is where it gets kind of confusing for some people. A male to female trans person. So let's review this. An MTF person was biologically male, or could be, and they're transitioning to female, so they feel like they're female, who was attracted to men, is not gay, she is straight. That confuses some people because she is not a he, and she is attracted to men, therefore she is straight. Okay, so the opposite is true too. Just whatever the person identifies with is their gender, and who they are attracted to, that would be their sexual orientation. Those are two different things. So here's some examples of LGBT issues or landmarks, I guess, are very important times in LGBT history. Now, this is only in American history, and I'm sure it goes back before 1924. 100% sure. And this is LGBT history is human history. I mean, it's been for as long as humans have been around, most likely. We see this also in animals and things like that. So this is not, a new invention. But you can see here that there have been organizations for gay rights for a long time. It's not just a recent thing. I think a lot of people think of LGBT issues as being new, but it's not. It's just been more relevant and more accepted and more transparent recently. Okay, here's some common misconceptions for you to read. I think it would be important to talk about the second to the last one because it comes up in news a lot. And I feel as educators, we should be able to very much understand what this is about because, for instance, a lot of scandals happen with teachers and students and having inappropriate relationships where they are predatory. Like these people are not teachers, they are predators and they are pedophiles. And so people have a hard time distinguishing. If you look at the comments of some of these articles about these predator teachers, you'll see that they are talking about, oh, teachers this, teachers that, but they don't understand this is a predator. Like this is a person who is a bad person who is doing horrible, horrific, unspeakable things. And so, separating that from the predator from the teacher, and not assuming that all teachers are predators, because that's not true. So the same thing is true for pedophiles, and gay men. A lot of times people think, oh, a gay guy is going to be a pedophile. It's just insane. Are there gay men who are pedophiles? Yes, but it would be more accurate to say that they're pedophiles than gay, because they're having a relationship that's extremely inappropriate. So a pedophile would take, it would be presumptive, I guess, over that gay, part of it. So every group of people have predators and pedophiles, regardless of their profession, regardless of their sexual orientation. So to say that the whole group of gay men are pedophiles is just simply ridiculous and not true. So, just keep that in mind. That's absolutely a misconception that way too many people have. This is just for your information too. If you ever go to a pride parade, you'll see all these different flags, and they all have different meanings. If you're like interested, you could Google and figure out what all the symbolism is in these flags. Now, here's an important thing to understand as well. So there are many different subgroups and subcultures within any culture. Like to say, in the Hispanic culture, blah blah blah, or in Black culture, blah blah blah. That's way too broad. There's way too many different people who are Hispanic or who are Black, and there's so many different groups within that it's almost discriminatory to lump everyone together like that. So when we talk about the LGBT community, the reason why I'm referring to it as that is because it's very, very complex, but I don't want to make it sound simple, because it's not. So I don't want to mislead you. The LGBT community has lots of different, like I put here, fractures, and sometimes this is a negative thing, and sometimes it's perfectly fine. Sometimes these subgroups are based on their likes. Maybe they like a certain thing, and so they're friends. Like, duh, that's what humans do. But sometimes it is racial. Sometimes it is discriminatory against gender. Sometimes it's discriminatory against their sexual orientation within the LGBT community. That is a thing. So again, I'm using the term community, but I'm using it loosely. Okay. So now that we've established the information part about the terms and what they mean, now we can get into what we do as educators and how we can support this group of people. Because it's a big, big group of people. Whether you know it or not, it's there and it's not going away. So, how to support? I just put some things here. Like, for instance, the first one, don't assume anything. People are people. Just treat them as a person. Do not treat them as something other or something less than or something alien. It's not alien, they're a person. Just treat them as a person. Stop bullying when you see it. If you see that happening, you need to do something about it. Correct language. I'm not the PC police. I'm not accusing you of a thought crime or anything like that. What you should do, though, is be aware of what's happening in your classroom. Be aware of the words that are being used. Be aware, if you're an administrator, just listen to the hallways. Listen to your teachers. Make sure that they're not saying this stuff, because you'd be surprised how many teachers may be using these words themselves. So, just correct the language, and you can use whatever tactic you feel comfortable with. I know that one time in my first year of teaching, a kid called a certain a certain song or musician gay, but he wasn't using it in like the actual way. And so I asked him, I was like, what is gay music? What does that mean? Because I didn't want to like call him out and say, oh no, you don't use that language. I wanted him to think about what he was saying and how that was not an appropriate word. Like, use another word, choose another word. There's a lot of other words that mean stupid or bad. You could create a gay straight alliance in your school. I don't think any school would hurt by having one. But that being said, I don't know if every school needs one. It depends on your environment of your school. If it's super hostile to gay kids, then yeah, they definitely need one. Um, for the last bullet, this is a very important thing that a lot of people have problems with. If a kid comes out to you, let me put it this way, if a person comes out to you, whether they are your friend, a family member, a kid, a student, it can be sometimes hard for people to know what to say. If you've never had this happen to you, you may not know what to say. And if it's happened to you before, maybe you didn't know what to say. Maybe you still don't know what to say. Well, let's talk about it. So, if a person does come to you and says, hey, I'm trans or I'm whatever, thank them for trusting you, because what that means is they felt okay and they felt secure enough that maybe you'd be okay with it. And maybe you're the first person that they've told. I mean, as a student, maybe you're that first person. Maybe that you're that one person that they can trust. So thank them for trusting you, even if it makes you uncomfortable. I mean, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. But at least, don't make them feel like they made a mistake. And also remind them that school, or at least your classroom, is a safe space. Because let's be real, not all schools are safe. As much as we would love that to be the case, that's not entirely true. Don't encourage them to stay in the closet, or don't encourage them to stunt their growth. But don't tell them lies. And make sure that your classroom and wherever you are in that school, that when you're there, that's a safe space. Just let them know. So, students that identify with the LGBT culture, and there's such a spectrum as to this, they have the same needs as every other student. We as educators can all agree that all students need to feel accepted, that all students need to be valued, that all students need to be heard. Okay? These kids are students, and they are just like anyone else. So just, understand that they're not a special group in the fact that you have to do special things for them. You just treat them like they are valued and they're not shot down, and just be a person. So as I mentioned, you could create a gay straight alliance, a GSA. Some places have like PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and they have like organizations for schools. But it doesn't have to be like an official, licensed thing. You could just make a club, which would definitely help people, because again, it's just like any other human issue. Having someone to relate to is extremely important. So if you can create a club and you can get these kids talking to each other, it would be excellent. Because like for instance, the Trevor Project, which is an anti-suicide hotline to help specifically LGBT kids, because there's a high suicide rate. So helping kids by creating friendships and having them talk with each other, that would be extremely helpful. School staff should model the social behavior they want other students to exhibit with everyone. Again, sometimes your teachers will be saying stuff that they should not be saying. Make sure that you correct that bad behavior. Do not shy away from someone just because they identify with a certain group. None of this should make you uncomfortable. And I'm not shaming you if it does, but I believe that if you learn more about it, you will become more comfortable. So if you feel uncomfortable, do more research and learn more about it. All right. So I put this in here because I feel like it is also important. The New York Times last month had an article that was headlined, LGBT people are more likely to be targets of hate crimes than any other minority group. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see the statistics on that. Thankfully, hate crimes have reduced substantially, but LGBT are now the number one group that have hate crimes against and discriminated against. Jewish being number two. And also, when we talk about LGBT violence that's happening to the community, um, the majority of the people who are getting murdered or the people who are being attacked are mostly trans women of color. So these are women who are probably Black or Hispanic, and they get attacked and literally murdered uh, crazy, crazy often. So that's another thing that is a big issue in the LGBT community. Here is a slightly outdated map from May of 2015. I'm a world geography teacher, so this is my jam. This is titled Global Gay Rights. And you can see in the legend on the left the different colors representing different things. You can see that on this map, America does not have marriage for gay couples, but obviously they got it in June of last year, so this is slightly outdated. But if you see, the most important thing for me is the red. The red is homosexuality punishable by death. There are countries in 2016 where you can be murdered because you are gay. That's insane. So this is just putting it in the global perspective of, outside of, quite frankly, the Western world. This is a little bit of a contentious issue. Even our ally, our fake friend, Russia, isn't too okay with it. Fairly often in the news, you hear about somebody going to jail because they're gay. This happens. This is like real life. So as for federal laws, there are quite a few that have to do with LGBT issues in schools. For instance, the Every Child Deserves a Family Act. This has to do with discrimination against same-sex couples, so preventing that from happening. Real Education for Healthy Youth Act is in regards to sexual education, and that's like a kind of a side note there, but for sex ed, they don't talk about gay sex, obviously, so they don't talk about how to be safe with that. So that is, a kind of a thing that's lacking there. So all these different things have different impacts in our schools and specifically are related to LGBT issues as well. As for Texas, one of the articles that we found was about Texas UIL, and it has to do with the gender that a kid can compete with for their sport. And the UIL says that you have to compete with the gender listed on your birth certificate. And this year, just a month ago, the Texas UIL committee was presented with a policy change to allow transgender athletes to participate in the sport that they identify with. But it was just pushed aside and they didn't touch it at all. So obviously that's not going to change anytime soon, but that is something to watch out for and to look for. I have these. I will put the links in the description so you can click on them if you don't have the PowerPoint. These are some recommended viewings that I would recommend if you want to learn more about this. If you feel like you don't know that much, well, check out these. Pride and the Danish Girl are movies, and Transparent and Gaycation are television shows. Here's some extra resources that you can use. The Trevor Project is, again, like anti-suicide. It gets better, same. So you can see these different things to help you be more supportive in your classroom. Here's some references. And then we go into some activities to do. So the Kinsey Scale, you may have heard of this. Now, in the LGBT community, people talk about how sexuality is a spectrum. What that means is there's a lot of gray area. So you could be 100% gay, or you could be 100% straight, or you could be 50-50 bisexual. But a lot of people are not either one of those. They could be, 99.9% straight, but they may go gay for one person or something like that. So there's, instances where there's exceptions. Again, it is possible to be 100% straight or 100% gay, but the Kinsey scale was the first to put that on like a line and be like, well, maybe it's not 100% either way. And it's just a scale. So he didn't make a test. Kinsey was the one who got the name recognition. There was two other doctors along with this. But again, this is not a test, but there are quizzes. So yeah, I just told you this. There is a spectrum and there are quizzes. So I would like you to take this quiz, and you don't have to tell us at all. You do not have to share this with anybody. Just be honest with yourself and just take the quiz. I don't need to know what your answers are, but I want you to think about how your answer might be different from what you expected the answer to be, because it may be a little bit different and it may help you gain perspective. And when you are reading these questions, think about how they might be for a teenager, how they might be a little bit different. Maybe think about yourself when you were a teenager. Would you answer these questions differently? Because the answer might be yes. You don't have to share that with us, but I just want you to have that experience and maybe learn a little bit about yourself. Okay, so then we have the discussion board. We have two discussion boards here. So this is the scenario that you're going to answer, and there's three questions at the bottom that you have to answer. So I'll read the discussion boards for you, and then you can read the questions. So the first discussion board. You are a teacher at the local high school, and in May you have a transgender student enroll in school. And the counselor places this student in your 9th grade class. This student was enrolled at one of your feeder junior high schools prior to moving last year, and the family is requesting that the school staff use male references and a male name when talking to your student. Your current students know the new student, but they do not know that he is transitioning into a male student. In junior high, your new student identified as a female, his birth gender. To further complicate the situation, the student's assistant principal is having a hard time acknowledging the student as a male instead of female. He insists on referring to him by what is on his birth certificate. This has resulted in heated arguments that you have witnessed between the assistant principal and the counselor. So there's three questions that you answer there, and just put yourself in that position and think of what you would answer that, how you would answer that. The second discussion board. When you look at a taper, you will notice all of the populations within the school. This allows teachers to target different students and work to raise the level of academic achievement. So then there's three questions in regards to whether you think that the LGBT subgroup should be added on there. Now, as a very short side note, this was recently discussed on the census as to whether whether the LGBT community should be a subgroup listed on the census. That causes a lot of different heated arguments on both sides of whether that or not that should be happening. So thank you very much. I hope you learned a lot from this. And yeah, go ahead and discuss on the discussion board. Thank you.